Let's take a look at the new rules for the Eldar Wraithguard. Lots of good stuff here, -1 damage, shooting in melee, and of course massive D3+3 damage guns. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're continuing with the Eldar leaks and rumours, and talking about the latest new datasheet to surface on the wilds of the internet. I'm sure you know the score by now. These are from the playtester version of the codex. They're not necessarily 100% finalised rules, but they're almost certainly going to be very similar to the ones that come out when the book does. In any case, it seems like it's good news for anyone who owns Wraithguard. They're one of the iconic Eldar units that go back absolutely ages. Definitely one of the unique and interesting units that really epitomise the Eldar, having to disturb the slumber of their ancestors to put them into war constructs to defend the living from the wrath of a hostile galaxy. I think a fair few people have them in their collections, as Craftworld sculpts go, they're one of the more recent ones. A lot of the Eldar range is still from around the turn of the millennium, though quite a lot of it's going to be updated very shortly. Plus the Wraithguard have appeared in various bundle deals over the years, probably because they are one of the more recent sculpts that Games Workshop's a bit happier to show off. Despite this, I don't really think they've been all that strong since the Craftworld Eldar Codex first dropped in 8th edition. Perhaps kind of okay when it was first getting started, but perhaps lost a bit of favour compared with things like Dark Reapers, Shining Spears and Eldar Flyers. Recently they did get a small boost in Chapter Approved, going down to 35 points each, though I'm still not convinced that it's made them particularly stand out within the Craftworld army. Again, like most of Eldar, a unit that's kind of in need of a buff, and a buff they seem to have received. So the Wraithguard do appear to remain an elite's choice for 10 power level for 5 of them, and I strongly suspect that there'll be 40 points per model after this update. Previously it cost extra to arm them with D-sides, but given their new rules, I think there's a good chance that they cost just the exact same amount as the Wraith Cannons. Their base stat line is kind of similar, no massive tweaks here. They remain at a movement of 5, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, strength 5, toughness 6, 3 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 9 and a 3+ save. The biggest change is the number of attacks perhaps. They used to just have the 1 but attack with Wraithguard fists. Now it appears that they have 3, but they have lost that option. As changes go, I don't really think that's much of a buff or a nerf really. They'll be a bit better against lightly armed 1-wound infantry, but a little bit worse against very heavily armoured things with multi-wounds. Either way though, they weren't exactly kings of the combat phase, they're all about the shooting. Keywords wise, they do appear to have the core keyword, and are infantry with the Wraith Construct and Spirit Host tags. I'm sure they'll have some sort of interesting buffs from the spirits here. Overall, the stat line hasn't really changed all that much. The more interesting things come from their weapons and also their special rules. The Wraith Cannon's now gone to an 18-inch gun at Assault 1, Strength 10, AP -4, and the big damage D3+3. To be honest, that isn't exactly unexpected. Once upon a time, Wraith Cannons had the D-weapon special rule back in 7th edition. They basically just destroyed pretty much whatever they touched. These things do basically open up a portal into the warp to blast their opponents into, so perhaps one of the things that are more deserving of damage D3+3 than some of the others. In addition, 6s to wound cause 1 mortal wound as well. Sometimes might be relevant, but most of the time I feel that's going to get lost compared with the rest of the damage of the guns. But in any case, they do seem to be massively more threatening than their previous incarnation, only 12-inch range and damage D6. If they have indeed gone up 5 points to 40, that will make them more efficient gun platforms if you just want them to blast tanks into the next dimension. On average, if you do get a squad of these tank obliterating guns within range of a standard vehicle, you're going to be doing around about 12 wounds on an average turn of shooting to something like a toughness 7 or toughness 8 vehicle. That's kind of similar to a squad of the new Fire Dragons, although the Dragons cost far less points. I think really the difference that you're getting here is the fact that these are mounted on really durable gun platforms as opposed to really fragile ones. It depends whether you want the shooting on something that's seriously hard to shift and has a bit better range, or to have almost twice as much shooting on 2 units that are relatively easy to kill. Next up, the D-side profile also has a few interesting changes. It has mercifully acquired a 12-inch range rule now, has been buffed to Assault D6 from Assault D3, is Strength 10, AP -4 and Damage 1 like before, but now rather than being a Flamer type attack, it's now a blast weapon and does not auto-hit. Overall though, if they are hitting on 3s and the opponent doesn't have any -1 to hit, that would usually still be a few more hits than they'd get on average before. Previously we were averaging 2, now you're averaging 2 1/3, and you'll get more against any massed ranks of infantry, things where the blast rule is applicable. Again, like the Wraith Cannon, 6s to wound would cause 1 mortal wound in addition, and actually that's really quite relevant there as you're getting quite a lot of shots, so quite a lot of chances for that 6 as opposed to just the 1 that you get with the Wraith Cannon. Say if you did want to try and evaporate some infantry and you had a squad of these guys firing at a unit with 10 models in, you could usually expect around about 13 wounds on that target, and you'd still be averaging something like 10 wounds against most vehicles as well, so it's not like they're rubbish against them either. Overall, out of the two, the D-Scythes do seem to be a bit more dangerous, but they are a lot more short range and a bit weaker against tanks. As I mentioned earlier though, the Wraithguard fists do appear to be completely gone altogether, so no poor AP-1 or damage D3 on your attacks. Finally, we come on to special rules, and first up they have Strands of Fate, but they don't appear to have battle focus. Strands of Fate is the one to punch in some 6s, so it could be quite handy for a 6 to save maybe if you're struck by a big AP-3 damage weapon, or I guess hit or wound rolls aren't going to be the worst if you're firing with a massively powerful shot like a Wraith Cannon. Lack of battle focus might hurt a bit, as you're not able to move, shoot, move with these guys, but to be fair, compared with the other very fragile Eldar, they are a lot more resilient. It's the other ones that are more interesting though. Wraithbone form does appear to apply to these guys just the same as it did the Wraith Knight. They're -1 damage innately, pretending to be Death Guard Plague Marines there, and it's really quite a fortunate state of affairs for them, as usually damage 2 or damage 3 weapons are going to be the best things for turning against elite infantry. It really helps them against one of their most optimal counters. They're still really not going to care all that much about small arms with toughness 6 and 3 wounds, so it might well be the heaviest anti-tank firepower that Wraithguard fear the most. Overall, despite potentially going up in points a little bit, I would say that this still looks like a big buff for the Wraithguard. A decent boost to survivability against some of the weapons that kill them best, and a fair bit of amped up power on their guns. The Wraith Cannons do far more against tanks and they have extra range, and the D-Scythe loadout is a bit better, but unless D-Scythes cost massively more, I still think that this is potentially a big win for them. They did cost a big 45 points before, I think it's unlikely for them to cost so much now. Finally though, their last special rule is called War Construct. This one seems to replace their Implacable special rule, which previously allowed them to fall back and shoot for no penalty. This now allows them to fire in melee against a unit that's taxed them in engagement range. I'd say this might be one of the only places that's a small nerf potentially. Fall back and shoot I think is just a bit more flexible, as it allows you to drop back and then have your entire army focus down the enemy unit that charged you. Having to remain in combat risks you perhaps not killing the enemy with your shooting, and then maybe getting another phase of damage out of them in combat, because you've chosen to remain locked up. What's annoying though is that this looks like it might only apply to the Wraith Cannons as it's worded here. If D-Scythes do retain the blast keyword, then it means that they won't be able to fire in melee just via the rules from the main rulebook, as that's literally listed on the rules for blast weapons in 40k. You can't fire them when you're within engagement range. I guess that might be one other reason to take Wraith Cannons rather than the D-Scythes. For that reason I feel like they might be at least fairly balanced against each other. D-Scythes do seem a fair bit more dangerous, but they've got a fair bit less range and they can be shot down in melee more easily. Overall though, a decent buff to the unit, might be good if you're an Yandin player and you do want to field an entire army of Wraith constructs. In any case, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Will this new incarnation of the rules make you excited to put Wraithguard on the table once more? Or are things like Fire Dragons going to overshadow them for close range damage dealing? If you've enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like this, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll certainly keep on reviewing any new datasheets that we find from the Eldar Codex, and I'll review the Codex in full once it's out. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention one way in which you can help support Auspex Tactics if you'd like to. Down in the video description, there's a link for a discount retailer called Element Games in the UK. If you were thinking about ordering in any models in the near future, you could think about ordering through Element. They give between 10 and 20% off Warhammer, have always been very reliable for me, and if you buy anything after clicking the link in the video description, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever if you pick something up. Could just be one to think about using if you were thinking about ordering in something anyway. For people over in the USA, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. That works in much the same way. Click the link, order anything off Amazon, and a small amount goes to help support the channel. It doesn't cost you any extra whatsoever. In any case, a massive thank you to you guys who have been using those, and a big thank you for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.